Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Clemmit. Welcome to the latest from our Global Insight series, where we sit down with leading industry professionals from the worlds of football and sport, and we get them to share their stories. And that's something I've done through a big chunk of my professional life as a broadcaster with BBC Radio and Television, and as an event host, including working with the UCFB and their Global Institute of Sport on their global summits and their graduates conference. And our guest today has quite a story to tell himself. He left home at 16. He was promoted to the Premier League 4 times as a player. And then 8 years ago, he got himself a job in West Brom's academy before being thrust into the limelight as manager himself. Darren Moore is one of only 9 black managers in the history of the Premier League. He's currently in charge of Doncaster Rovers, and he really is regarded as one of football's true gentlemen. You know that thing that people always say about you, about being one of the game's true gentlemen. Is that one of the parts of your life that makes you most proud? Because that kind of says a lot about upbringing, about values, beliefs.
Yeah, I think for me, Mark, it's just when I hear that, it means I've been consistent with people over the course of time, and unbeknown to myself, really, I don't say those. I leave those. If it is one of the nice men in football, then that's that. I'm sure that most of my competitors on the pitch didn't think I was that nice as a defender on the pitch, but that's because I was competing. But certainly, Mark, it's probably been that I've just been consistent in when talking and being in and around people, really, and that's because I've just got a good respect for everyone and anyone within the structure and outside the football, really, that I've come into contact with. So yeah.
I mean, it's hard, isn't it? A quarter of a century in the game to get all those bits right of making sure you're courteous, the pleases, the thank yous, the hellos, goodbyes, are real basics. But do you think to an extent, Darren, they're an old school skill, and actually coming generations need to work on those a little bit?
Yeah, it's always those skill sets that you said, has always been sort of inbred in me from such a young age, from parents, brothers and sisters. We've still got the same affinity with each other even now, even though we're grown adults. We've all got our families and that, but we still, when we do meet up, Mark, we still got that same love and respect for one another, really. And I think it's something that's been instilled within from a very, very young age, and sort of it's carried on into my professional footballing career, and something that I adhere to, something that I think's important, really, really important. Them skill sets and values to any individual, really. Just to say please and thank you doesn't take too much, really. And that's the way it's always been, and will continue to be that way.
Will you paint a little picture of us of life growing up? Mum and dad's what? But is it one parent Jamaican or both Jamaican?
Yeah, no, both parents Jamaican. What mum's side was from area in Jamaica called they're both from Westmoreland. My mum's was in Manchester in Jamaica. My dad grew up in Savlamar in Jamaica, and then sort of came over to England here. And there was 6 kids, 4 boys, 2 girls, and we grew up together in Handsworth in Birmingham. And that was it, really, growing up as sort of kids there. I went to primary school, junior school, and then obviously on to the senior school. And in that time, Mark, while I was never ever a problem at school, I just really had a love for the game of football, and it was sort of birthing me from the age of about 9, 10. And it just sort of took off from there, from Sunday playing Sunday league football, playing for my school team. It just escalated from there really until an opportunity came for me to go down to Torquay United. And down there I started my my scholarship. You know, I was actually a schoolboy at Warsaw, and I got let go by Warsaw, which I was devastated with. But then in the end, I ended up going like sort of nearly 200 miles away from home to start my scholarship, and then done 2 years of scholarship, and was the first person in Torquay United's history from a scholar to sign a 2-year professional contract there, really, at Torquay United. And then, you know, my career just took off from there, really. But it was a proud moment because signing the contract at Torquay was actually the professional contract, and it's something that I wanted to do, was become a professional. So when you do sign that professional contract, you then got to move the barrier now and say, well, now that I've signed it, now it's about making strides within the game. And so I've always had that, I suppose, that inner drive as well in me, in terms of keep moving barriers, because as you know, Mark, that success is always a moving target. So, you know, you just got to keep moving with the time, and really grateful and proud. Probably nearly 30 years, if you're looking at playing and going into the coaching side at the moment, where the game's served. I've served the game, and the game's certainly given me a lot back, really, that I'm grateful for, and continuing to do so, Mark. You know.
And was there always unswerving parental support? Or, for example, when you had that junction at Walsall, well, it didn't quite work out. Was there any doubt from parents saying, oh, come on, start to concentrate on maybe a trade or a profession? You know, not many people are going to make it as a footballer. Or did they encourage you to follow your dreams?
Yeah, I mean, really, they were really good. I mean, from being let go at Warsaw, I mean, it was absolutely devastating, because the dream within it was to become a professional footballer, and Warsaw were just moving into the new Bescott Stadium then. So, you know, from Fellows Park going into Bescott Stadium, it was a real time. And I was thinking, yeah, brilliant. And then, but unfortunately, I didn't get taken on, so I was really, really disappointed. And then it kind of went into like sort of 4 or 5 months of kind of just floating around, and I was going to sign for a professional football team in Birmingham called Paget Rangers, in a real semi-professional team. And upon going there, deciding to go and sign for them, I get a phone call from Torquay United to say, would I like to come down and have a trial down there? And I ended up going back down to Torquay and spending a week, days down there, really impressing, and then actually playing for their reserves at the age of just 16 and doing really well. And then, you know, I got signed on from there, really, and I got signed on a 2-year scholar. And I always remember my dad saying to me, son, he said, you know, support from my mum says, don't worry, you know, Walsall don't know what they've missed out on, son. You watch, you'll get there. And then my dad, when I was going to Torquay, he said, son, he said, will you do me one favor? Just when I was going to leave the house, I said, yeah, Dad, of course. He said, whether it's 1 week, 1 year, or 10 years, when you come back to me, just come back to me with no regrets.
Wow.
And that's what he said. And I thought, okay. So, of course, my dad knew I was going down there for 1 week. And I thought, and he was, obviously, when I look back at it now, Mark, I look and think, he knew if I went all out in that week would turn. And as long as I'm going all out, it'll escalate. And it's only, you know, in my latter years now that I look back at that. And I mean, I've got it imprinted in my head really now. And it sort of still drives you now, if you like, you know, just having no regrets. So, you know, he always was with open arms with me, always loving, just said, one, you got to come back to me and say you got no regrets. He said, we're good to go, son. And so that kind of, you know, burnt in me when I was going down there. And obviously when I look back now, and it's still something that sort of burns within now, you know, when I look back on him now, look at what he said to me then at the time.
I mean, I look at your career as a player and where you're headed to. There was a lot of highs and lows there, weren't there? I mean, you might have been loving being part of certain squads or clubs, Darren, but you had a lot of promotions that were followed by relegations. So how was that molded you within the context of a football environment, and what kept you going through some of the darker times?
Yeah, and really, really good, because you've got the experience of knowing the highs and what it takes to win leagues. And then obviously you've got the experience of the lows of once you do get promotion, in trying so hard to stay within the ramifications, stay in the league. So you understand some of the promotions being good in terms of your mentality and what it takes to get promotion over a course of a season, and that consistency. And then also the relegation side, where there's that real sheer pressure of not wanting to be the team that drops out into the league, and understanding what it takes, but understanding as well that there's so much change with a relegation, because people leave, jobs get cut, things like that. So it's a real pressure side in terms of dealing with that. So I suppose the experience comes from knowing what both ends of the table brings and what it entails, really. And I think that's the experience that you take on board, and understanding when it comes to the season, what teams are in what position, the mindset that's needed and the mentality that's needed, and understanding where they're at as the clubs are, So I suppose it's given me that experience.
And were there some that absolutely thrived on some of those environments, some of your teammates, and others who just could not cope with the intensity of that pressure of being 2 wins away from, reaching the promised land, or 2 wins away from being relegated back down? You'll have a mix of characters and personalities, I guess, in any dressing room.
That's right, Mark, and it is that. And for me, it's from that stage, it's all a mental, it's all in the mind. You're capable, your bodies are capable, you're able. It's at what position are you putting your mind in order to perform, and that's the big the hindrance in terms of what can be the undoing and what can sort of unlock that individual at both ends of it. Because like you said, it's when people can see the finishing line and they can mathematically work out what's needed, everything else usually invariably will take care of itself. Because what individuals tend to do is focus away probably from most of the things that they have no real control over, whereas over the course of the season they've been consistently performing well. If you're going for promotion, so continue doing what you're doing and get over the line. But once it becomes those 6 or 7 games from the end and you can mathematically work out what's needed, goodness me, it does play a huge factor in it. And also with the teams at the bottom, it can mean a couple of wins away from safety, and that may have an adverse. It might change it, because actually they know what's required. They've got to do it, and they go all out, really. So that's why at the end of the season, you see a lot of top teams get beaten by so-called relegation threatened teams, because it's just the mindset in terms of how both teams are looking at it. Really, the ones just getting promotion seem to freeze more so.
Now, it seems to me you always had a sort of commitment from an early age to start preparing for when you weren't actually kicking a ball around. I mean, am I right? And also, I get the impression that having lots of footballer downtime irked you, to just lie on the sofa watching Countdown or something. You like to do something constructive with it?
Yeah, no, for me, it was always, Mark, from really early. For me, it was about, when I went on the pitch, I felt like we had jobs to do on the pitch. So I really used to focus in, really, and listen to what the manager was saying at the time. And then I used to sort of carry that onto the football pitch. And even there was times when I knew my job for the team, but also, mate, I knew what others should be doing. So, and I used to instruct the players as well, what they should be doing, and knowing what they should be doing. So I think from that, really, within me, without me even knowing Mark, I thought, well, maybe I've got like some sort of managerial coaching leadership in terms of that. So what I ended up doing was I ended up doing my level 2, my B license, A license, my business management in applied business management coaching, my leadership coaching. I done my pro license, and all these courses, governance course, all these things in and around football, because I had a thirst and a hunger to not only want to play the game and, you know, and amass probably nearly 600 games in it and have a career over 20 odd years, but also to have the paperwork to say I can teach and deliver it as well. Like, you know, and the next best thing from finishing playing was then to pass on my knowledge to other youngsters. Really, what I thought was I wanted to be a good coach within the game. But obviously, as you can make your plans, but sometimes the situation happened, you know, at West Brom where, you know, I was propelled into management in the Premier League in relatively somebody that was meant to be like a novice at the time, and taking hold of this great club in the Premier League that it was sad to see at the time, because everybody knows it's a club that, you know, I've been there many, many years, and to see the club in that state was not good really, because everything at the time at the club was wrong. You know, the fans were against coming to support the club. The players had lost double figures in the Premier League. We were told by the media we'd never win another game for the rest of the season. The training ground was kind of toxic because it's kind of losing mentality, and I just thought it was wrong. So I stepped in, and for 6 games, we lightened the mood in the club. And the biggest thing for me was giving them players, instilling that confidence and belief in the players that they could go on in the Premier League and win games.
Well, where's that, Darren? Because you've kind of skipped out about it. I mean, first of all, there was a bond with West Brom, because I think I'm right in saying they used to train on your school pitch, didn't they? When you'd be bunking off lunch or some lessons where you had to go and watch the first team. They actually used the school facility. So that's where a bond was formed.
Yeah, there was a bond straight away, because like you said, Mark, just to go back, when I was at school, West Brom actually came to the school. We just had a new Astro 3G pitch laid. Gotcha. And they, on times when it was bad weather, they came to us and trained on the pitch. Mark, you know, it was the only time when they used to come and train in our training and our school AstroTurf that I never went for any lunch. I stayed there for the whole hour, and I did not move for the whole hour. And I just watched them train. And it was great to see them. And I used to look at things like how they passed the ball, how they connected on the ball, headers, the control, the movement, the speed, the precision, the detail, what the manager was saying to them at the time. And, you know, and so lots of things at the time. And the manager at the time there was Brian Talbot at the time, who was the manager there, you know. So it was a real good insight for me, and I was absolutely memorized. And, you know, my mates used to say, come on, we're going for some lunch, and I never moved. And, you know, right to the last second I could be there, I'd be there watching it. So from that, I had a real affinity with the club, and obviously, you know, I used to go up to the Hawthorns and watch a couple of games. I used to watch games between the Hawthorns. I used to go down to the games, watch at Villa Park when I was 14, 15. I used to go and watch games just to watch professional football matches and get tickets and go in. And then, of course, then my career took off at Torquay. And then I had all that with Torquay, and then it sort of brought me full circle to play for West Brom.
Yeah, and which you obviously did. And once you got to the end of your career and it wound down at Burton Albion, I mean, what was the link then? Because you went into the academy, didn't you? U-team coaching role at West Brom. And when you say you were fast tracked, did you not have 6 years in total? Kind of,
yeah.
In saying you were behind the scenes, but there wasn't kind of any preparation that just sort of picked you up and threw you into the limelight and the lion's den.
Yeah, for me, it was always having that. When I was at Burton Albion, I was studying physical education at Wolverhampton University at the time, and I was going to finish it off. So I was going to carry on one more year, and I was going to play for. I had an opportunity to go to Tamworth, Telford, or Mansfield, and all three clubs were at the time in the conference, and I was thinking, brilliant, I can go and play for one of those for one more year. We train on a Tuesday, Thursday night, so it means I can get on with my education for full time, so I can really get it done. And then whilst I was making plans for doing that, West Brom said, Darren, there's a position for under 18s coach, and would you like to interview for it? So I thought, yeah, I'll go and interview for it, and obviously interviewed for it, and it went well, and they offered me the role. And it was a big decision, Mark, because I had to, the next year, I wanted to play one more year in the conference, but to finish off my physical education. But then it was an affinity that I had to go into coaching. So here was an opportunity for me to go to full-time coaching. And then I took the opportunity to go into full-time coaching with the Albion. But I weren't able to finish off my last year, my physical education. And I tried to see if I could do it. But as you know, with the full-time coaching, it's full-time. And at the time, the club was in just getting into category 1 then at the time. So the workload was incredible. But what a great insight into the coaching side and preparing for that side of it. And it was a real learning curve. And I'd always be indebted to, the West Brom and the academy at the time for giving me the skill sets and the tools that I have now, because certainly at that time then, you're watching people like Tony Pulis as a manager, Roy Hodgson, Brian Robson, Alan Irvine, Steve Clark, just to name a few that had been through the doors at West Brom. And it was a great insight into watching all of them work. There's not a right way, there's not a wrong way. But one thing what I have done with them all, Mark, is I've taken something from all of them in terms of their preparation, their planning, their tactics for games, their training sessions, everything. Is all of those is probably part of where I'm probably at today, really, in terms of, learning from there. Obviously, you do things your own way, but there's probably different bits to me that dip in from all of them, and it's probably molded me in terms of where I'm at today in the academy. So I'm very grateful for that time. And here we are now as manager now at Doncaster and serving and just continuing to develop, continue ever competitive, and just
Were there any moments when you stepped up, and you described so brilliantly the situation at West Brom, but you're 10 points adrift. Your second game is away at Old Trafford. Were there any moments of sheer, oh my goodness, my name's on the door, I've got to make these decisions that I've seen others make across the way? I mean, just how did you deal with being catapulted into a situation like that?
Yeah, and what a situation, you get given the role. We played against Swansea. We drew the game 1-1 against Swansea, and we felt we should have won the game against Swansea, and we drew 1-1. But the feeling dressed in the training ground on Monday morning was incredible, Mark. And why? Because the lads and everybody at the ground could look at the TV monitor screens and see it was a 1-1 draw. And the performance was positive. Everything was positive. So there was a real different feeling in the training ground. There really was. And from that moment, we built for the Man U game. And I can tell you this now, Mark, and you can ask anybody what was associated with the time. We went to Old Trafford to win because we had to win. So we went to Old Trafford, needed a win, and we prepared all week. It was a great week. We prepared all week, and then we went there and performed so well on the day. Really performed well on the day, and deserved it. And when I look back at the team, I always kept a goal threat on the pitch. So West Brom being West Brom, I've always kept that you need that goal threat on the pitch as well as being defensively well. You need that goal threat, and you know, we kept Matty Phillips, James McLean, Jay Rodriguez, and Solomon Rondon, all attacking players. I moved Chris Brunt in from the wide into central midfield with Jake Livermore, and just set the team up that way, really. And my goodness, did they perform? And if you look at the team at the time over those 6 games, I only made one change because last game at Crystal Palace, because Matty Phillips had a little bit of fluid around his knee and Nasser Chadby came in. But I only made one change, really, because the team, there was such a group cohesion and a team ethics that it just snowballed. But when we went to Old Trafford, we went to win. We went with a game plan and we went to win. And on the day, the boys had 10 out of 10 performances. And the biggest thing for me on that day, Mark, and everybody will say, Darren, you won at Old Trafford. Darren, managers have probably been in the game 10 years and never won at Old Trafford. The biggest thing for me was not the fact of winning at Old Trafford, even though it was the icing on the cake and it was a special weekend because it gave the Blue Half of Manchester the title at the time. The big thing for me, I will always remember the feeling in the dressing room on those players' faces. That's the biggest thing for me, because they'd felt that winning feeling again, and the game plan and everything that we'd worked on that week, it happened and it worked, and we won at Old Trafford. And as you know, it's a difficult place to go and win, but everything was detailed, and that feeling seen on the players' faces will be long in memory and won't ever, because I remember saying at the time, you know, they're saying that we can't win, and I said, yeah, if you're an outfield player, let's exclude the goalkeepers now. If you're an outfield player this weekend, you're part of 200 players in the world of football gracing the Premier League and playing. So you can't tell me, lads, that you've not come over hurdle and you don't deserve to be here. So why get here now and wait? Let's go and win. Let's go and show them what we're about. Let's go and show those attributes that you need as a professional footballer. So when you get those and you feel them, and the players put in the week's training, the performance, and you get that result, it was honestly things that I can't explain now, and my words probably won't justify what was in the dressing room at the time. And from there, Mark, it was just a snowball effect, really, in terms of what happened after that. I mean, we was 10 points adrift. I mean, Stoke City had been relegated before us. We beat Spurs. I mean, we beat Man United, we beat Spurs, we beat Newcastle, we drew with Liverpool, the Champions League finalists, and it's incredible. And we were 2-0 down against them, but such was the never say die attitude that it was just a whole transformation. And of course, what took it into the last week of the season was the 1-0 win against Spurs at the Hawthorns, and it was an incredible moment. The roof nearly came off the place in terms of it, but I always knew that there was a game on Wednesday night between Southampton and Swansea. Southampton and Swansea. We knew it had to be a draw to go to the last game. And I'll always say, if that was a draw, I mean, they scored in about the 70th minute, Southampton did, and it sort of dampened the dreams. But I always felt that if we'd have gone to Crystal Palace needing a win, I reckon we'd have got the win, because we really had momentum at the time, really. And credit to the players, credit to the staff, everybody there, really, in terms of the mindset and the transformation turnaround. And that's why at the end of that April, we got Manager of the Month award, but I shared it with everybody because it was everybody's joint efforts in showing that when a team's got the unity and togetherness, what can be achieved, really. And no, it was a proud moment, really, at the time at the club.
I mean, I can hear how brimming you are just recounting all this, and obviously the effect you had earned you the job, but within a year you experienced the other side of football, your first experience of being sacked. I mean, can you share that with us? Because I always think with football managers, you know, most of us will experience career setbacks, but they're usually done in private. But a football manager's setback is surrounded by this whirlwind of pressure and build-up and media coverage and everybody knowing your business. I mean, that moment when you get the news, how did you get the news? What was going through you? What was, because I think it's important for our students to understand how to process life's inevitable disappointments, you know? Would you mind sharing a bit of feelings and stuff with us about that?
Yeah, it was at the time it came as a shock because we were doing well at the time. So, and I don't think there was ever one time at the time when I was at West Brom that I ever felt under pressure. Never, ever once. Never did I go into work ever one day and felt it's not right, it's not going right. As why is that? I suppose it's because you feel you're doing the job right. And I suppose when you're looking at where the team is and the team's sitting fourth in the Championship and we're odds on to get back to the Premier League, the last thing you think you're going to be doing is losing your job. That's last on it. So I'm going to be honest and say, Mark, it did catch me by surprise. I was shocked. I was absolutely dumbfounded with the decision, but I respect the decision.
I get that, and I understand. I understand that side of things. But as you kind of leave the building where you've given it your heart and soul for a year of your life, I mean, I guess your legs are you're almost being hurtled through the air with it, aren't you? It's that kind of level of shock.
Yeah,
everything is pulled away from you.
Yeah, and I think it was, and I think if I've got one disappointment was I wanted them to just give me the final 10 games. I really did. Just give me the 10 games because there was 36 games. We were fourth in the Championship, and we were clear. We'd already nailed the playoffs. It was about that getting into that second, make that automatic. And with the 10 games remaining, I just wanted those 10 games really. And I'll always feel within my heart that everything that happened at Aston Villa would have happened at West Brom the way it went. I really do feel that. But it will never, ever know that now because, it's gone on. And that's probably the biggest disappointment is just let me have the 10 games because, having the year what I did have there and that, but it wasn't to be. So the decisions come and it is a shock and it is because everywhere where I went, Mark, everywhere the outside, the whole nation was talking about it, whether I went to London, whether I went to Manchester, whether I was in Birmingham, everybody was talking about my dismissal from West Brom. And usually from my dismissal from there, it's gone on. But I think it was the way the whole nation had captured me as a manager being thrusted into this role in the Premier League. And, from all the social network it looked odds on that West Brom was going to have a great escape number 2. So what had happened was the whole world had sort of watched this club nearly pull off staying in the Premier League and me as a manager. And then there was outside peer pressure for the club to give me the job. So you've got fans from all over sort of hounding West Brom, just give him the role. And then obviously you've got the club's doing so well. So obviously when I did get told the news and I'd come away from the club, I was astonished by the reaction from the whole nation really with it, because really they were doing my talking for me, or the radio platform, the TV platforms, everybody was doing the talking.
But so, that's what you earn as well with the respect that you've built. That's what you earn with this tag of being one of football's great gentlemen, is that you're afforded that layer of protection. That's where those things come back to reward you, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. You can look at it like that, Mark, and it's a fair point. But I just felt that they would. So my focus now was trying to get my mind back into a position where I'm ready to go and work again, and to give the next opportunity everything of Darren in terms of going forward. And that was my thing. At the time it hurt, and at the time it was disappointed, but you've got to then quickly just refocus and then get moving on. And I think that's the big thing for the students listening to this, is that, when them disappointments come in, it's recognizing your own self, the qualities that you've got in terms of it, because you will get knockbacks and disappointment, but it's how you respond and bounce back from them. And I think that's where it was really. And it took me 3 or 4 months really, because like I said to you, everywhere that I went, it was a constant reminder of it. And then in the end, I had to refocus my mind that if the next opportunity did come, I'd have to be in a position where I wanted to take it and go on. And sort of that was that sort of episode. And that's probably the first time really I've shared outwardly really in terms of it, because I said at the time I respected their decision, and we move on, you know, and it's great for me even now seeing them back in the Premier League, because I know there's a lot of good people in the football club that deserve that really. So for me, but now for me, it's about moving on and carrying on the career and keep building and keep moving forward.
There is one set of questions that I'm extremely reluctant to ask you, because I just want to have a chat with a football mate and chat about a man who's just had this most brilliant consistency. But inevitably, there are so few opportunities off the field for black managers that it comes up as a subject, I'm guessing, in a heck of a lot of the interviews that you do. Do you accept the fact that for major change to happen, there have to be pioneers who deal with questions like this? Or do you wish it would, well, you obviously wish it would go away and there weren't relevant questions, but you know what I'm saying? Are you irked by the fact that I'm bringing it up now that most interviews do?
No, it is. And Mark, the mere fact that you're having to ask the question today in 2020 tells you where it really is. I mean, it really is. And I mean, it won't go away until we recognize that it is something that's out there, because those figures really, for the amount of players that's within the game, playing the game, and yet those figures in those kind of key leadership roles are so alarming. It's such an alarming rate, low rate at the moment.
Well, can I just share it? Can I just give you the latest figures I could find, just so everybody knows what we're talking about? Right now, currently, a quarter of the sort of 500-ish players in Premier League squads are either black or mixed race. But since the start of the Premier League 29 years ago, there have been 9 black managers, of which 4, including you, along with Terry Connor, Hayden Mullins and Chris Ramsey, were effectively given the emergency situation and thrown in at the deep end to try and do your best with what most people regarded as a bad situation. So effectively, there have been 5 kind of permanent managers have been given that opportunity. I mean, that is plain plumb ridiculous.
Yeah, and it is. And I mean, the opportunities, and when you look at it, Mark, you think to yourself that the opportunity was given to us in an emergency situation, but yet you were speaking, if you're looking at an isolated situation in mind, in terms of that, it went relatively well, having given an emergency situation, because of just being given the chance. And the chance was given to me, and you take the chance and the opportunity, and it was given to you. So how much more are out there that are perishing now and have perished over the years by not being given the opportunity? The game's in a good place, but mark your card, Mark, the game could be in such a more better and wonderful place with the inclusion of more black minority and ethnic coaches, without a doubt. And I say that because of the wealth of experience that we're missing out from the game. And you've got that such diversity on the football pitch, but you need to replicate that surely in the coaching and the management background in terms of that for the game, surely, because if you want to see better and change for better, then obviously the changes at the top needs to be better to give them opportunities. And it's just the opportunities. We're just looking for the opportunities. And those figures since the Premier League started to where it is now, and talking about the players, what involvement in the game, and now the management, it's an alarming figure really for all to see. And as I said, over these, certainly the last couple of years, in terms of what's happened globally and the movement within all the organizations, and within that, serious questions have been asked, and there's a lot of accountability being asked in terms of the governing bodies. All of us are really in terms of doing change, and we're in this process now of what does the change look like? How is it going to...
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I wanted you to finish there. I mean, clearly there are people with hideous, heinous views. Clearly there is discrimination. Clearly there is bias. Do you actually think there might be a decent proportion of people out there who are of well-intentioned but frightened of the subject because of ill education? I mean, I live with a black woman, but I'm still always conscious of not tripping up, of making sure that my terminology is pitch perfect. And I think it usually is, but it's one of those subjects that a lot of white people who are not used to black culture and not used to being in and around black people find difficult to talk about, even though their heart might be true. Am I making sense there or not?
Yeah, you're absolutely making sense. And my advice to that, Mark, would be talk about it, open the door and talk about the situation. And if exactly how you've put that to me now, I'd be like happy to talk and open the door and talk about it. The hindrance is not talking about it, and then the mistake is deeming something that you think in your eyes is that's how it is, and that's where the mistake comes really in terms of it, because it's A, not understanding, B, then thinking, oh, I'm not going to ask the question, and then to top it off is then thinking, oh, I think it should be this way because it seems right this way, and that's where the hindrance, and that's where the confusion comes into it, and that's where you miss so much more of an understanding in a situation, in terms of that going forward, and how much more we're losing in the game now because of that, because where we're at now, there's so much more being lost in the game that I believe that is waiting to open the doors to these multitude of coaches and managers, to bring a different freshness to the game, ideas, whatever it may be to the game. But again, it's people in these places opening the doors. But the thing is, what I'm encouraging is, if you open the doors, you've got a whole nation behind you, so wanting to support you. So don't think that giving the opportunity or I'm going to get barracked by it. No, you actually got a whole nation willing to support you and encourage you in this, really. And you've got a multitude of experienced professionals out there wanting to serve the game in some capacity. And I'm not even talking, Mark, at the very, very high end. I'm talking through every department and fraternity in the game, wanting to serve the game.
I think we should also just stress as well, Darren, that actually if we look right across society, I think 1.5% of senior roles in industry are in the hands of black people at the moment. 55,000 of 4 million senior leadership management roles. That's not just football ills, that's society's ills, and maybe comes about not about Great Britain not fully facing up to its colonial past, not fully understanding the history of its own nation and the part it played in atrocities. I mean, I don't want to go off into a history lesson, Darren, but there seems to me there's a complicit problem at the heart of UK society.
And it is, and very, through something that's been terribly happened globally and was publicized globally, and we know the incident that took place has allowed everybody to look within. And what I'm certainly hoping from here, Mark, is that the change that is going to come and the change that's happening will be the right change, but it'll be a change where everybody's involved with it to see that go through. Because I think we've all adhered to seeing these figures and thinking it can't be right, that can't be right. But now there is talk about movement, about affecting that and changing that. So hopefully you can only hope that over these next weeks, months ahead, that the ongoing conversations continue to have to see for the better. Not, I'm talking as football as a sole identity, but society in as a whole. Some of these issues start to be addressed.
As always, I've loved talking to you. Can we finish on a high? Will you share your number one piece of advice that you would pass on to anybody, regardless of where they are? What's the number one thing that's driven you? I guess you've hinted at one, with no regrets from your old man. But what would you like to finish with as your parting kind of offering to inspire people?
No, mine is obviously we've all got many different skills, and you know, everybody's skill sets are different, and whatever it is that you enjoy and feel passionate about to do, then go all out with it, really. And like I said, you know, no regrets in doing it. I think the regretful thing will be is to turn around and not in years to come and not doing it. I can watch any football match now and think to myself, I've got no regrets in terms of being out there, because I've had my time there. And my time now is in the coaching management field, which I'm going with the same principles, really. And that's the best thing I would advise for any individual. And for the ones listening in, if you have got a friend in that, or encourage them and support them in it. Don't hinder them, support them in it, really. And that's the best advice I can give to us all, for somebody to take something from it, really, Mark, for me.
Loved that. Well, most thanks for I didn't like some of the content we had to chat about towards the end, but yeah, it's been great being with you. Thanks for sharing. It's been brilliant.
Cheers, Mark. Thanks ever so much, and keep up your good work as always, mate.
Thanks to Darren. Hope you find that chat inspiring. I'm Mark Clemmit. Hope you'll join us again soon for another one from our Global Insight series.